The first thing you need to understand is that I almost did not play at all. Not because I was nervous. I stopped being nervous about playing in front of people around the age of 14 when I realized that the music was not about the people watching. It was never about the people watching. The moment you play for an audience, the music becomes performance, and performance is a different thing entirely from what I did when I sat down with my instrument and actually played. What changed my mind was the way she said primitive. Director Val Oren of the Catherine Institute of Cross-Species Aesthetic Studies said it the way people say things they have said so many times the words have lost all their weight. Casual. Settled. The verbal equivalent of a door that has been closed for so long nobody remembers there was ever a question of opening it. She said it at a reception on Station Kara 3 where I had been invited as part of a cultural exchange program that I had not particularly wanted to join, but that my department head had strongly suggested would be good for my research profile. I was standing near the window with a drink I was not finishing, listening to a conversation I had not joined when I heard her say it to a Valdorian cultural attaché, who had apparently asked her assessment of human musical tradition. Primitive, she said. Technically limited. Emotionally direct in a way that lacks the layered complexity the more developed traditions achieve. The attaché nodded with the polite thoroughness of someone collecting information they did not plan to verify. I turned around. I said I would like to respond to that assessment. Val Oren looked at me. She was tall with the gray patterned skin of the Kethiran academic class and the specific expression of someone who had not expected the subject of their assessment to be within hearing distance. She said, "Go ahead." I said, "The assessment you just gave describes human music as technically limited and emotionally direct." I said, "Those are accurate observations about what human music does on the surface. They describe the method but not the mechanism." She said, "The mechanism." I said, "Human music is not layered in structure." I said, "It is layered in time. The complexity is not in what you hear the first time. It is in what the same piece does to you the 10th time, the 50th time, the time you hear it at a moment in your life that gives it a meaning it did not have before. The complexity accumulates in the listener over years. You cannot hear it in a single assessment." She looked at me with the careful eyes of someone deciding whether to engage. She said, "That is an interesting theoretical defense of a tradition that has not produced work comparable to the established forms." I said, "Have you actually listened to human music?" I said, "Not assessed. Listened." She said she had reviewed representative samples across 12 primary traditions. I said, "Reviewed." I said, "How long did you spend with each?" She said, "Sufficient time to form an accurate assessment." I said, "I will make you an offer." I said, "Give me 20 minutes and an instrument. Sit in a room and do not assess. Just listen. After 20 minutes, tell me the same thing you just told him, and I will accept it completely." She looked at me for a long moment. She said, "You are very confident for someone defending a tradition that ranked 14th in our comparative study." I said, "I am not defending the tradition," I said. "I am asking you to actually hear it before you decide you already have." She said the reception was not the setting for a performance. I said, "The Institute has practice rooms." I said. I walked past them coming in. 20 minutes. Whenever you choose. The attaché looked between us with the expression of someone watching, something more interesting than they had expected the evening to produce. Val Oren said she would give me the 20 minutes. She said tomorrow morning. I said I will be there. I spent that night not preparing. That sounds like arrogance. It was not arrogance. The pieces I played when I actually played were not pieces I prepared. They were pieces I had been carrying for years, some of them since childhood, worn smooth by repetition into something that came out without thinking when the thinking stepped aside. I had not played properly since my brother died. That was 14 months ago. 14 months of silence that had not been a decision exactly, more a discovery that the instrument was still there, and I was somehow not quite in the same place I had been when I last played, and the distance between those two things had not yet closed. I did not think about that when I agreed to play for Val Oren. I thought about it that night when I took the instrument out of its case for the first time in 14 months and held it and understood what I had agreed to. The practice room at the Institute was small and plain, with good acoustics, the kind of room designed for work rather than presentation, which was exactly right. Val Oren arrived with a data tablet. Assessment instinct, I supposed. Old habits. I asked her to put it down. She looked at me. I said, "You cannot listen and assess at the same time." I said, "They use the same part of your attention. One of them has to stop for the other to work." She put the tablet down. She sat in the single chair in the center of the room. I sat with my instrument and did not look at her and did not think about her and did not perform. I played for my brother, not a piece he had liked specifically. a piece that I had always associated with the specific quality of his presence, something I had never been able to explain rationally, and had never tried to. He had been quiet and patient in the way of people who carry a great deal internally and do not burden others with it, and there was a particular piece I had known since I was 11 years old that had always felt to me like that quality-given sound. I played it the way you play something you have played 500 times, which is to say without thinking about the notes at all, thinking about the thing the notes were made from. I played for about 12 minutes. Then I sat with my hands, still on the instrument, and the room was very quiet. Vale Oren was sitting in the chair, and she was not moving. I looked at her. She was not crying. The Kethiran physiological response to emotional experience was not tears. But something was happening in her face that I had not seen there the previous evening, a quality I did not have a word for in any of the 3 languages I spoke. Something that looked like the expression a person has when they have just understood something they did not know they were missing. She did not say anything for a long time. I did not fill the silence because the silence was doing something and filling it would stop it doing that. Eventually she said, "What was that piece?" I said, "I do not have a name for it," I said. "I have been playing it since I was 11. I wrote it for my brother." She said, "Your brother?" I said, "He died 14 months ago," I said. I had not played since then until this morning. She was quiet again. She said, "I could hear that," she said. She said, "I do not mean I could hear the grief specifically," she said. "I mean I could hear the weight of it. The way something carried for a long time has a different quality than something new. It had been held by many years of something new. It had been held by many years of something." I said, "Yes." She said, "The layering in time," she said. "What you described last night." I said, "Yes." She said, "I heard something this morning that I did not hear when I reviewed representative samples," she said. "I do not have a framework for what I heard." I said, "Most people do not." I said, "That is why the reviews come out the way they do. You cannot framework it before you have experienced it because the framework comes from the experience and cannot come before it." She said, "What is the experience?" I thought about how to say it honestly. I said, "Human music is built from loss." I said, "Human music is built from loss." I said, "Human music is built from loss." Not exclusively. Not always. But at its core, the tradition is built by people who understood that some things do not last and found a way to hold them anyway. The complexity is not in the structure, it is in the holding. In the specific weight of something loved and gone being given back for the duration of the piece. She looked at me. She said, "That is what I felt." I said, "Yes." She said, "I did not expect to feel something I could not identify." I said, "Most people do not." She said, "The Institute's comparative study," she said. "The ranking." I said, 14th, I said. 14th, I said. "I know." She said, "The methodology assessed technical complexity and structural layering across a standardized listening period of 15 minutes per tradition." I said, "Yes." She said, "The methodology cannot capture what I heard this morning," she said. "The methodology does not have a variable for what you described, for loss held over time, for weight accumulated across years." I said, "No." I said, "It's a significant gap." I said, "It is." I said. She looked at her data tablet on the floor where she had put it and did not pick it up. She said, "I have been directing this institute for 16 years, she said. "I have listened to more music from more traditions than anyone currently working in this field." She said, "I have never put my tablet down before." I said, "I know." She said, "How did you know I would put it down?" I said, "I did not know," I said. "I asked because tea was necessary and you said yes. The rest was yours to do." She looked at me. She said, "You risked the whole thing on my willingness to put the tablet down." I said, "I risked the whole thing on your honesty," I said. "The tablet was just the test of it." She was quiet again. Then she said, "I would like to hear the piece again." I said, "Yes." I played it again. This time I watched her while I played, which was something I almost never did, and what I saw was a person actually listening, which is a different thing from a person hearing, and a different thing again from a person hearing, and a different thing again from a person assessing, and which is rarer than any of those other things. When it finished, she sat with it for a while and I let her. Then she said she wanted to revise the Institute's methodology for evaluating human musical tradition. She said she would need someone who understood the tradition from the inside to help design a framework that could capture what the current methodology missed. She said she was asking me. I said I was a musician, not an academic. I said. She said the methodology would need someone who understood what was actually there before they could design a way to measure it. She said, academics could design measurements. They could not always identify what needed measuring. I said that was an honest thing to say about your own field. She said the tablet test worked in both directions, she said. I looked at her. She said, you tested my honesty by asking me to put the tablet down, she said. The willingness to revise a 16-year methodology based on 12 minutes of music is the same test in reverse. I said yes. I said. She said, did I pass? I said yes. She said, did I pass? I said yes. She said, did I pass? I said yes. She said good. She picked up the tablet and made a note, and I sat with the instrument in my hands, in the small plane room with the good acoustics, and thought about my brother in 14 months of silence and 12 minutes that had ended them. Outside the Institute station, Kareth 3 ran its ordinary day, and inside that practice room something had shifted that I did not yet have full words for. I put the instrument back in its case carefully the way I always had, the way my brother had taught me when I was 7 years old, latching each clasp in the same order every time. That was what he had said when he taught me. Same order every time, he said. Because the things worth keeping deserve that much. I kept the same order. I always would.